But we can't just talk about the great that happened during this time. We also have to look back at some of the mistakes that were made, many times fatal mistakes. The period that they were in, they didn't have the lessons that we now have today. And so, we have the luxury of looking back at history and learning so we don't make those same mistakes. But Harper, if you were able to go back in time to the Paris Commune, what would you tell them? What are some of the things that you would try to convince them not to do?
Yeah, thanks, Toya. It's a great question again. Obviously, it was inevitable and understandable that mistakes were made because the communards, the leading members of the Paris Commune, didn't have a lot of the history that we now have to understand certain dynamics that were taking place, But I think the biggest mistake made by leading members of the Paris Commune was the underestimation of the hostility of the French state, of the bourgeois state. Initially, they tried a more conciliatory approach towards the French state, headed by Adolphe Thiers, and tried to sort of make amends there, have some sort of friendly relationship, but obviously, the French state was never going to stand for the existence of a city run by the working class and the potential that had to spark other revolutions, and really challenge its power in a widespread way. So actually, when the Commune was first formed, the French state was still reeling. It was still kind of on the back foot from the Franco-Prussian War that Paul spoke about. So actually, they had a real opportunity that if they had marched on Versailles, which is where the French government was set up at the time, if they had marched on Versailles initially, when there was kind of the moment, that could have made a big difference. If they had, for instance, taken the Bank of France into their control, which had loads of resources and from the ruling class of France, then that could have made a big difference, right? If they had more actively from the very beginning tried to make connections with the rural poor of France or the poor of France and working class of France and other cities, or the working class of adjoining nations, that could have cut across some of the isolation of Paris, which was a big factor in its downfall. So actually, it's based on that one of the only amendment to the Communist Manifesto was added by Marx and Engels, And it was basically this idea that the working class actually in a revolution, it has to fully seize state power initially. And that has to happen en route to future decentralization as the need for a state kind of withers away, which was further theorized by Lenin in State and Revolution. But that was something that definitely had to take place.